Howdy, folks, and welcome to the Hunting Stories Podcast. I'm your host, Michael, and as usual, we got a good one for you today. Today, we actually finally have another brave female hunter that is willing to come on the podcast and share some stories with you. Today, we're hearing some stories from Ashley Covert. Ashley is an adult onset hunter like myself, but something unique about her is she started before being a hunter as a vegan. So super interesting story there. I'll let Ashley go ahead and tell it to you, but make sure you follow her on social media. It's another Ashley Outdoors, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, whatever. And give us a follow while you're doing that as well. But let's just jump into this thing and let Ashley tell you some of her stories. Thank you. All right, Ashley, welcome to the Hunting Stories Podcast. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I am doing well. I want to say thank you so much for coming on. I really do appreciate it. I mentioned it to you just briefly before. It's hard to get female hunters to come on and share some of their stories. So I get really excited whenever, a lady wants to come on and share. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Why don't we kick this thing off right and just why don't you start by introducing yourself to the folks so they know who they're going to hear some stories from tonight.
So I'm Ashley, and I run a page called Another Ashley Outdoors, and it started out just as fun, and then it's kind of flourished into much more than that. I've got people that follow me, and it's been a fun time growing just in general from the page. Figure that you could have that much self-growth just from putting yourself out there, but there's a lot of self-growth that comes from it.
That's cool.
And I've been hunting for about 6 years, I want to say.
6 years? What got you into it?
Actually, my husband got me into it. He's been a lifelong hunter. Him and his dad hunted his whole life. And I was a vegetarian before I met him.
No way.
Yeah.
How'd that conversation go?
It was interesting. I started wanting Baconators one day, and that's how we found out I was pregnant.
So as a vegetarian, you weren't necessarily an ethical vegetarian, maybe like a diet vegetarian, and so you were with him, and he was a hunter, and you're a vegetarian, and you didn't think about dabbling in it before the Baconators?
Well, no, actually I didn't. So mine was basically, it wasn't more so like, it was that I didn't like the taste of meat. And I had watched a documentary where they like fused the meat together and they were wearing these like hazmat suits and stuff. And after I watched that, I was like, what? I don't want to eat. Basically gelatin like molded together meat. And that was when I was like, I don't want to eat meat. I think I'm good.
Yeah, that sounds like McDonald's chicken nuggets or something. But yeah, okay. So then you wanted a Baconator, you realized you were pregnant, and then so like what was the catalyst? You're like, okay, now I should try hunting.
So when my husband and I were friends, we had talked about hunting, and because that's all he had ever talked about. And I was like, well, I think I would like turkey hunting because I eat chicken. Like I started becoming more pescatarian than anything because you get sick if you don't eat certain things. Yeah. And I was like, turkey hunting would be really fun and I would actually eat that. So I talked to him about turkey hunting before we ever got married or got together or anything. And then when I started eating Baconators, I was like, man, I think I would like to hunt deer if I'm going to start eating red meat, I would rather eat deer meat than I would red meat because red meat hurts my stomach. And so me out one year, and I guess it was, he calls it his test hunt. And he where he knew I'd be able to shoot a doe. I shot a doe and he was like, you did it. Like, he goes, I didn't know what to expect from you. He goes, I didn't know if you were going to cry. I didn't know. Yeah. And I was like, I did it. I shot her and I don't do the gutting and stuff. I can't handle the sound of it. It's anything else is the noise from it. There's something about it. And so I make him do like the initial cut and stuff, and I'll help clean up and I'll help cut the meat off.
But that's reasonable. It's pretty cool that you were open-minded to the entire process as a vegetarian, because a lot of vegetarians just are like, nope. But that's cool. I mean, the Baconator definitely helped you get there, but that's still pretty cool.
Definitely did.
That's awesome. Well, cool. That's a cool story. I think you're the first converted vegetarian that I've had on the podcast. And I've said this a bunch of times. Yeah, I've said this a bunch of times on the podcast before, but I honestly feel like vegetarians and hunters really ethical hunters, not the, yeehaw, shoot whatever hunters, have more in common than like the guy that just goes to the grocery store and just grabs, cellophane wrapped whatever. So, and I've talked to a lot of people that feel the same way.
Well, and working in hair, I get a lot of girls that question like why I hunt and stuff, and they're like, "Why don't you just send him out if you don't like the killing part?" And I'm like, "Because I like the hunting part. Like it's not just about the killing portion. You appreciate where your food came from when you actually do the killing part, though.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't go to waste nearly as much, and you think twice before you throw leftovers away because you're like, man, I really don't want to waste this."
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can't outsource portions of the entire process. Otherwise you're just going to the grocery store, right?
Yeah.
So it's like being part of the kill, which I don't like killing stuff, but I do love
No.
hunting. I love
Yeah.
the work involved. I like the effort. I like everything about it. Then the kill comes and it's like, though that's not what I like. There's a sense of joy because you work so hard for it, but yeah, you can't sort of outsource your killing, right?
No.
Yeah. Well, we got off topic. We're not supposed to talk about that kind of stuff, right, Ashley? Like, let's tell some stories. So why don't
I
you why don't you?
story, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess, yeah. I mean, the vegetarian story is very interesting, but yeah, let's set the stage. Well, the first story you got, I know you have a couple prepared for us. Tell us, in the last 6 years, when was it? And dive into it.
So I kind of got rid of one of my stories, which was my first deer story. Um, this is my, and I really wanted to start getting into archery because I've always thought archery was cool. So he also wanted to test me to make sure that I could shoot a deer with a rifle. And
Yeah.
so then the following year, I ended up hunting with a bow. And I think it was that following year that I ended up heart shotting my first deer,
Oh wow.
um, which was the coolest thing ever. I mean, obviously we aim and that's where we plan to hit, but I never thought that that's where I would have hit or that's where I did hit. I just have very little confidence in myself.
Yeah,
Um,
especially I mean, how long have you been shooting, right? You shot a rifle a year before. Did you like
yeah.
immediately pick up a bow the next day, or was it like 6 months, 3 months that you'd actually been shooting?
So I went out and shot the rifle that year. It was 2018, and then 2019 I had to wait until I finished paying my bow off because we did payments. So by November of 2019, I think is when I finally fully had my bow.
Okay. Oh yeah, and
I
that's
think.
like right in the middle of the season, so you just picked it up and
Mhm.
went after it. That's awesome.
But it was hard and it was really frustrating at first because trying to shoot is it's weird when you're very very new to it, and I didn't grow up around it, so I didn't know what I was supposed to fix or what I was supposed to contort or what I was
Yeah.
supposed to change things. So when I heart shot that deer, that was like the most exciting moment of my life when I finally found her because she ran forever and she was
Really?
in and out of stuff, and she ended up dropping down and then going back up and dropping down again. And I thought for sure she was just gone. I was like, I had to have like maybe one lunged her and something happened and she just kept running. Because
So
with
were
the
you
other,
in a tree stand, a blind? Where did you take the shot? And was she just
the,
strolling by?
she was strolling by and I was sitting in the blind
Okay.
and I shot at her. She like kind of chilled for a minute because when Justin first started having me out, he would have me on food plots or on feeders just
Okay.
to make sure where we live. It's not we don't see a whole big bunch of deer throughout the hunting season, so we have to feed in order to keep up with all the other public or private land around all the public and all of us.
Gotcha.
Um, so she was kind of hanging out. She was strolling by and then she stopped for a second to graze. And that's when I shot at her. And she went barreling down the hillside. And Justin, I think he was in a tree stand that day and he heard her running and he said, oh gosh, because he heard her go all the way down to the bottom. So he her towards the bottom. And we go around and go around and we keep winding through the rocks and winding through the weeds and trying to figure out exactly where she went. And we finally get there. And I see her, and Justin was like, you put a good shot on her. And I was like, did I? And he's like, yeah, come look. And I come look. And I was like, oh my gosh. So then we start going through all of the gutting portion and everything. And he takes the heart out and just hands it to me. And he's like, it's your first heart shot. And I was like, no way. Like, I could
That's
not,
amazing. How
like,
how far did she run if you had to guess or if you measured it?
If I had to guess, it was probably about 100, 120 yards.
Well, that's not bad. That's not
Not
bad at all.
bad. Where it is, though, it's straight downhill.
Yeah.
So it kind of sucked on that because it was like downhill and then she went back uphill a little bit over this direction and then she dropped back down. But it's like as a crow flies, it's like about 120 yards that she ran.
Gotcha.
But
That's not too bad at all. I shot an elk this year and it ran about 130 yards. And I didn't heart shot it, and I was very happy it didn't go any farther than that.
oh,
So.
yeah. Yeah, it's hard when they run because one, you don't know if they're gonna drop. And two, you don't know where they're gonna drop. And
Yeah.
where we it's like it's all broken up. So there's some public here and then it's surrounded by all this private. Or if you're hunting private, everybody else has sections that can join to where your private is. So it's very nerve-wracking when you shoot a deer, just wondering if it's going to so happen to land on your piece of land that you're allowed to be on.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't never thought about that. Huh. I mean, I guess what do you do then? You call the warden and see if you can get on the property, or you call the landowner, or just
You call the
sneak
landowner.
in?
No, no, it's really that's the hardest part about being a new hunter and not being as confident as I feel like I should in myself is just wondering where they're going to drop when I do shoot them. Like
Yeah.
it's exciting, and then when they start running, my excitement kind of trails off for a little bit until I hear them drop. And once they drop, I'm like, yes, I got it, I did it.
That's amazing.
But
So when you followed her 120 yards, was there a good blood trail, or did she just like make an
there
obvious
was
path?
trail. Unlike my first one I shot, she was probably about 30 yards from me, and I shot her, and there was no blood trail whatsoever. I shot her with the 25-06, and there was
Okay.
nothing, which
Huh.
was weird. So with my bow shot, there was actually a good blood trail, and that was very positive for me.
Use mechanical or fixed blade?
That year I was using mechanicals.
Okay. Cool.
I've
Yeah,
seen,
I've only shot two things with my bow. One being a turkey, and it ducked, which then meant that I hit it right in the neck and basically took its head off. So that was a quick, easy one.
yeah.
But then my bull, I shot with a fixed blade, and there was no blood. We were so lucky that we found it. We looked for an hour, couldn't find a drop, and it ended up going 120, 130 yards, rearing up, and then falling over backwards. And so we couldn't
Oh,
even find its antlers. We were like, that looks like a fuzzy rock. Let's go look at that. And that's what it
yeah.
was, basically.
Oh gosh, you guys got so lucky.
Yeah. Fortunately, he was in a big field, so like we were looking. I mean, we couldn't tell that it was him, but we're like, something about that doesn't look right. We got close enough. We're like, oh, there he is.
That's wild. I'm happy you guys found him.
Yeah, yeah. What's crazy is he filled up with blood. It was a good shot, but for whatever reason, it was in a complete pass through, but no blood trail at all. It was very unusual. In fact, when we found him upside down, there was only about a foot and a half pool of blood, and that's it. And it wasn't until we were gutting him, just like flooded.
Poured out.
Yeah, it was
Here.
absolutely crazy. I've never experienced anything like it.
I wonder if the blades were just sharp enough that it like I don't know.
Maybe,
My
maybe
brain's
Iron Will. I don't know if you're familiar with Iron Will, but yeah, they are sharp.
that's wild.
Yeah, right.
Heard of
So
anybody had before?
yeah, I've heard a couple people with Iron Will, and it might be because they're so sharp. They're not super wide broadheads, and that might be why too. But I mean, that my bull was. I mean, like I said, he reared up and flipped over within a minute. We waited 2 hours before we were
That's
looking for him, but yeah, he was dead basically immediately. Which is, it's cool when you just kill these giant animals with a stick, basically, right?
yeah,
A well placed stick.
that's always a fun time.
Yeah. All right, Ashley. Well, that's a. I mean, did we finish that story? I don't want to take you away from it. I
I,
kind of went on my own little tangent there.
I think we finished that one.
Okay. Well, then give us the next one. Let's keep going.
My next one. So there is is this deer that I had dubbed Bruce. And we were walking through the
Like the
summers,
shark from Nemo.
like Bruce Jenner.
Oh, okay. How does a
Well,
deer get the name Bruce Jenner?
so we thought this fella was a doe with calcium deposits because it always had a little baby fawn with him. All through the summer, he would be at the mineral sites and everything. So we thought it was just this doe with mineral deposits. And so
That's
we
funny.
better. And we found out later on in that summer that it was a boy. So I still have his head in the freezer and I still need to get it aged and I just keep forgetting about it. But all he had were these like, they looked like little baby Tic Tacs that came up off the front of his head.
Huh.
So watched him and watched him. And then Justin finally got a look at him from a tree stand because I still wasn't elevated at this point. I was still hunting from the blind or from the ground.
Okay.
We were having a bum day and Justin was like, okay, well, I'm going to try and like drive you some deer. So as soon as he starts walking, this doe pops out of nowhere. And I took the shot and I watched the doe drop right in front of me, which was the very first time that I've ever watched an animal fall in front of me. And let me tell you, that was a gut-wrenching experience. Like, they've ran, and I've never actually witnessed it happen. And so I was already
Did she hit the ground dead, or did she hit the ground and then like struggle a little bit? And okay, well, that's
no,
good, at least.
dropped. And so, but it was just a weird feeling, like witnessing it. And so, like dealing with that, and then all of a sudden, this little fawn comes out and starts meh. I was like, no. So I'm like thinking that I just killed this poor baby fawn's mom, and like I'm distraught. Justin ends up walking back towards me because he heard me shoot, and he comes to me and he goes, "Babe, what's wrong?" And I was like, I just shot a doe. He's like, you need to sit, your face is ghost white. So he walks down to check out this doe that I shot. And when he gets down there, he goes, good news, it has nuts. And I was just like, what?
Best news I ever heard.
Like, you shot Bruce. And I was like, oh my gosh. I'm about in tears. And I find out that I shot Bruce. And everything's golden. But it was the strangest, weirdest turn of events. Like it was the day that I learned the most about hunting, but also the day that I was so relieved
I bet.
find out I didn't do something awful.
That's the funniest deer name I've ever heard. I just want to say, and it's got a great reason. Everyone's usually like, whatever names they have, but Bruce Jenner, that's great. And I'm glad that you were able to like relieve yourself of that like sorrow, right? That you just killed mama deer, you killed Bambi's mom, because that's everyone's worst nightmare.
Yep. And like I find it weird that I find it as one of my favorite hunts, but it made me realize so much about myself just as a hunter and as a person, that it just resonates with me. As much as it was like there was so much turmoil, it was such a good hunt at the same time. And I mean, it probably will happen one day. One day I might shoot Bambi's mom, and it prepared for that moment, which I needed, evidently, because whew.
Yeah, right. I have a story for you. This is not my story. It's actually my former boss, and it's kind of like the inverse of your story, if that doesn't give too much away. But he's mule deer hunting in Utah with his son, and they go out and they both have tags, and there's two mule deer on this hillside, and I don't know all of the details. I just know the main point. But basically, him and his son go, and he gives his son the bigger mule deer, so his son shoots the mule deer, and at the exact same time he shoots the other one, and they're both fork and horn, like big. Like his son probably shot like 160-inch mule deer, and he shoots like 140-inch mule deer. And so they go over and they drop them right in their spot. They shoot with muzzleloader, so 50 caliber, like big rounds. And they go over there, and his son finds his deer, and he's like, okay, great, now let's go find yours. So they're looking for his mule deer, and he goes over, and his son finds it like over a ledge. He's like, hey, Dad, here he is. He's like, hey, Dad, where is his nuts? No. So it's like the exact opposite of yours. Like, hey, he's got nuts. And this one's like, where's his nuts? It turns out it was like, I don't know what the odds are, but it was a female. 140-inch antlered mule deer doe.
That is wild.
Isn't that crazy?
That big.
Huge. I saw, he sent me the photo first, and I'm like, man, that is a nice buck. And he's like, that's a doe. And I'm like, what do you mean that's a doe? What do you mean? Like, what are you talking about? And so he's like, yeah, they gutted it and took it all apart. And they were like, yeah, there were no male like body parts at all. That is just, and apparently it happens. But yeah, he shot what I would have to say is the biggest doe probably anyone ever shot, because
That's insane.
I was like, I would be happy to shoot that buck, and yeah, doe.
I've heard of does with antlers and stuff, but I've never heard of them being that big. Just like I've heard of hens with beards, but
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard of a doe with a 140-inch spread.
Right? Yeah, I'll try and find the photo. He sent it to me. I'll have to ask him if
Yeah.
it's permission, if I can actually like share it on my Instagram. But huge deer, like awesome deer, and then it ends up being a doe, like one in a 10 million chance of getting that particular animal. So, and in your story being like, hey, it's got nuts, reminded me because his son's quote was, "Where it's nuts." So it's like
Yep.
the inverse of your story. So.
Yep. That's funny that
All
there's
right.
somebody words one to mine.
Yeah, right. All right, Ashley. Well, this is fun. What else? What else do you got for us? We'll just keep them coming, rapid fire.
Well, I can talk about my turkey hunt because
Yeah,
that one
I
was
love turkey hunting. Let's do it.
I that is my absolute favorite. So I love getting on the ground and crawling and stuff. And this my successful turkey hunt was a little bit before I was crawling through the grounds. But Justin and I we went out opening morning that year, and it was pretty noisy. There was a bunch of calling, and we just weren't successful the very first day. And he went out probably one or two times in between. He wasn't successful. So then I got out the second time. I don't remember how far into turkey season we were, but it was another loud morning. And there's always one that I chased, and it was over across the holla. He was an old one, and his feathers were graying. I don't know how
Oh
old he
wow.
is. I haven't heard him the past couple of years, so I'm assuming he died or somebody got him.
Did
But
he have like a unique gobble or something that you could pinpoint him?
oh yeah, it was like raspier than any of the other gobbles, and he would stay directly across the holla. He wouldn't drop down like past a certain point. You could see
Okay.
him, like you could get him in your binoculars, and you could see him going back and forth, but he would not cross.
Huh.
So I finally gave up on going after him, and there was another one down in the holla to the, I guess it would have been to the left of us. So it's just going off, and we ended up running and gunning for a little bit or whatever you want to call it. And we ended up sitting down, and he started getting closer. So we were like, oh shoot, he's not going to come up through this way because there's a bunch of down trees. So we go back up to the field. We're sitting in the field and we wait forever. And he finally makes his way up, and he starts coming through. He comes into view sight, and Justin is just amped. He's on my right hand side. As soon as this bird comes into sight, he's like, shoot it, shoot it. So
Are
I
you are you with your bow, or you got shotguns for this?
shotgun, but
Okay.
my first bird that I have ever had like this close to me, and he's walking in all swollen. He's not like going super crazy or anything since he's come in, but he is swollen, and then he's letting off a couple gobbles here and there. And Justin's like, shoot him. I end up shooting him. He's at like 12 yards from me.
No
And
way.
like
Wow.
I thought he was gonna see us and like freak out and fly before you ever shot him. And I was like, I was so shaky. I could not get that bead anywhere near that bird's head the whole time. I'm sitting there and my arm is like spinning circles. I might as well be rowing a boat because it was not solidifying anywhere. And I can hear him, and I'm like, I would love to shoot, but I can't find this bird's head right now. Like,
That's funny.
I've never, like, I swear that shotgun was just spinning circles trying to land on that bird's head, and I could not for the life of me get myself there.
That's
But
amazing. So did you calm down, or did you just like try and catch it as it went by?
I ended up calming down because he was moving slow. He was like sidestepping sideways a little bit, and then he would
Dancing.
down and then step forward some more. And he was getting ready to attack our decoy, I think. But I was trying so hard, and I was like, all right, take deep breath, deep breath, deep breath. And I finally take one big deep breath in, and boom. And it's the funniest thing because in my turkey video, you can see it just send me back into the tree. And Justin's like, I honestly think you hit your head in the tree. And I was like, I could have, but I don't know. I was like, I couldn't tell you now either.
Yeah. God, that's funny. You can see the turkey behind me. Went this way. That was
Yeah.
my first turkey, is a Miriam turkey. And I've told the story before, and I could tell it, but your story actually reminded me of the people that I was with. I was hunting with this gentleman. He's a mentor. I met him on Facebook of all things. I was like, hey, my wife wants me to like not go alone. Someone want to teach me the ropes, and I go out with this guy. And he's like, at the time, his son had to be 8. But I got my bird, and then we continue hunting with his son, and we're driving around, and his son's like, all right, we're not gonna find any birds. I just want to shoot my shotgun. And so his son gets down, we set up some sticks, and we're shooting at a can, and the kid fires the gun, and it's like in the movies when people fire a gun and they shoot backwards. This little 8-year-old boy with his 20 gauge just like flies back, and we're like, "Oh shit, are you okay, buddy?" He had a couple tears, but your story reminded me of that. He did hit his target, but I think the excitement of being in the process, because he's shot a bird before the year before when he was 7, but
Yeah.
something about like not chasing a bird and just firing it. That gun happened to be too much for him that year. So I believe that if you're not ready for it, those shotguns, they kick pretty hard.
They do. If you're not behind it, you're about to get rocked.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Was that a Eastern? You have Eastern turkeys in West Virginia, I assume?
Yeah. This is
Okay,
my bird. I know we're not recording, but that's the one that I got.
that's a good looking bird. He looks like you shot him at 12 yards a little bit.
He was a pretty one. I
Yeah,
was fun.
I got another bird behind me too, and I shot that one with a 270, if you believe that.
That's
Yeah, with my rifle for like 50 yards. And what's funny is I pulled my rifle up, and it was like I was axis deer hunting in Texas, and a turkey happened to come up, and it was turkey season, and in Texas you can use whatever you want. So I was like, all right. So I pulled my rifle up, and it's like times 10 scope.
oh
I couldn't find the bird to save my life. And I was like, all right, ramp it down to like times 4, and then I was like, well, I had my bow and my 270, and that was it. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna take some meat home. So I was like, let's see what happens if you shoot a bird with a 270. And
where'd
I
you
blasted it. What was that?
where'd you end up shooting him?
High back, which is good. So both of the breasts were totally fine, and both the legs were fine. So like all the meat was good to go. But the back side of that bird didn't look very pretty.
Yeah, I'd say.
Yeah. Either way, I was eating good. I made KFC bowls with that guy. So yeah,
Yeah.
Kentucky Fried Turkey and mashed potatoes and corn. Oh man, it was good stuff.
Oh, I bet it was delicious.
Yeah, I got the recipe from Jeremiah Dottie. I don't know if you know who that is. He's from Field to Plate. He's a wild game chef. Crazy story. He was like a restaurant chef, and he developed an allergy to red meat, and he just couldn't eat it anymore. So he started becoming a wild game connoisseur, and he's just rolling with it. He's an awesome guy. Amazing recipes.
I'll have to check him out because I'm
Yeah.
always looking for these, especially being new to meat.
Right? I don't know if he's got any Baconator recipes, but you never know.
Listen, if you can give me a really good deer burger recipe, like I'm down for that because
I'm
we
sure he
haven't
can.
told that yet.
I'm sure he can. I am absolutely, and he's super responsive too. For all the listeners out there too, if you hit Jeremiah up, he gets back to you on anything. I remember I was antelope hunting and just sending him messages because I interviewed him for the podcast, and he told a bunch of antelope stories. So I started asking him questions, and I'm literally stalking antelope, texting him, and he's just replying right back to me. He's like, "No, no, don't do that." And I'm like, "All right, hold on, put my phone away." Then I lost my release, and the antelope got away because I couldn't shoot my bow.
Well, that's awful. That's terrible. Like,
Yeah, yeah, but I did have a second release. I just that particular stock was blown, so you can't win them all, right, Ashley?
yeah, you can't. That's
Yeah.
like last year when I finally got drawn back on a buck. I was so pumped and I thought for sure I was going to get him. But from my anxiety, I done rattled where I have a gearhead bow. It's got the two risers. And so I was shaking when I drew back and it done rattled my arrow in between the two risers.
Oh,
Did a
yeah.
ding, 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 ding. So he just sat there and would not come into a spot where I could actually shoot him. He just
Yeah.
stayed in the brush. And then when he took off, it was like right out of my way of shots. And I was like, oh my gosh, that would have been my first buck.
Oh no. Oh yeah. No, I've got just like It's a ham ski rest, right? But it's got the like fork that you put your arrow in, and I've occasionally with my arrow on those as well. I've never done it to an animal, but I've definitely like pulling back just at the 3D range or whatever, and been like, ah, wonder how I stopped doing that.
This last year, I was the worst with it. We went to Wisconsin too, and I basically had the same kind of thing happen, but I kind of like I got really excited because it just got done raining and we were in Wisconsin and I hadn't really seen very many bucks. And two bucks were playing in the rain and they came darting from behind the blind that I was in. And I kept the back window closed because they were like, keep the back window closed, only open these front ones. And I was like, okay, perfect. And so I did what I was told. And if I would have opened that back window, I probably would have had a buck. But they came booming by too fast. So then I was trying to draw back. And when I was trying to draw back, when they came back through, it rattled again. And I like bumped my arrow off my nock when I was trying to knock my release on. And it just, I don't know. I fumbled the whole entire season last year 2 times.
So the arrow and the nock separated, or the nock came off of your string?
The arrow and the nock separated. Like, well, no, arrow came off the string. Yeah, my brain.
Okay.
The arrow
I've done that before.
Popped it off.
Yeah. So this was it. This turkey? No, this is a different turkey. A different turkey that I actually didn't save the fan for. But I was hunting again in Texas. It was Easterns. It's a long story, but the culmination of this turkey story with this basically the same thing happening. This turkey comes in at like 100 yards, and I'm calling, and it's coming right in, and I've got a slate call because I can elk call with mouth calls, but I can't turkey call with mouth calls, and I don't know why. But I give it to my buddy, and I'm like, hey, keep doing this. I taught you how to do it. So he's right next to me, and he's yip, 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 and this gobbler's coming right into my decoys, and he's fired up, and I go full draw, and the nock falls off the string. And so I'm at full draw with no arrow. And my buddy, and it's like right when COVID started, so we didn't really know how close we could be. It was all that weirdness, and so he's like 6 feet away, and I'm like, psst, psst, like trying to get his attention because I'm like, as long as I don't move, and we've got one of those blinds. It's like 8 feet of 2 foot tall cloth, right? So like he can crawl around, but we're not in the building. We just have this cloth in front of us. So I'm just psst, 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 and he finally gets his attention. And he's like, oh shit! So he crawls over to me, belly crawling behind the cloth, gets over, grabs my arrow, puts it on my string, and then looks at the bird. But he never lets go of my arrow. And I'm like, let go! I'm like holding this back. At this point, I'm holding back for like 30 seconds. And he's like, oh shit! And so then he lets go finally of the arrow, and I'm like, all right. And then I take my shot, and I won't say it was a good shot by any means. In fact, at the time, I was underspined in my arrows, so my arrows were all over the place, and I didn't really know why. Brand new hunter. Either way, that's the bird that it dropped, and its head went up, and then just took its head off. Like, I got really lucky, because I was using a mechanical, but it wasn't a wide blade or anything. I just got lucky, and my first archery kill. It was a complete shit show.
Not like that, though.
Yeah, right? So, all right, well, so yeah, I keep stealing the stories here, Ashley, but you're telling some ones that like ring true to me. I understand exactly where you're coming from. We're both new hunters, and we've both had some of the same kind of funny things happen. But I don't know. Do you have any more for us?
I don't know. I'm trying to rack my brain. I try to remember everything, but I'm terrible at
that. That's totally fine. That's totally fine. Well, then in that case, we can wrap it up. Not a big deal. But why don't we tell the people where they can find you? I know that you've been doing another Ashley Outdoor stuff. Is it that across the board? Instagram, TikTok, YouTube?
All of the things are another Ashley Outdoors. Yep.
All the things. Perfect. Well, I'll make sure to put links to all of that in the show notes so people can find you real easy. Is there anything else you want to mention? I know you were doing a big giveaway. Is that already wrapped up?
No, so that one's going to start in April. The first of April is when it starts, and then it's a weekly. So there'll be 4 weeks of prizes, and it's just going out, shooting your bow, sending me a picture, and liking the sponsors. So that's all that. Pretty simple, and the prize packs are pretty large now. So I'm stoked about that. Whoever wins. Awesome.
Very cool. All right, Ashley. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. It was fun hearing your stories, especially like someone who's been hunting as long as me, and then again, hearing all of the same little follies, because it's funny as your new hunter, the stories are not necessarily this grand kill that you had. It's like, oh, here's the stupid thing that I did,
Yeah.
and that's how most of my stories are.
Yep, it's all our faults and what we learn from them. And then
Yep.
once we get wrong, then we'll have our kill stories. We'll get
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, we will. We will. Sooner than later, you'll be twice the hunter. Your husband's name's Justin, right? You'll be twice the hunter of Justin, and you'll be dropping all the big bucks, and he'll be like, all I can get is Bruce Jenner's these days. So,
Hope so. I hope so. No, I do. I love when he gets a good harvest, kill, whatever you want to call it. Everybody's so picky on words anymore.
yeah, you guys share a freezer, so that makes a lot of sense. So, all right, Ashley. Well, thanks again. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, guys, that's it. Another couple stories in the books. I want to thank Ashley, of course, for coming on the podcast. Like I always say, we couldn't do it without our storyteller, so thank you, Ashley. It was really nice to meet you, and it was fun to hear your stories and how they kind of overlap with my journey as well. To listeners, thank you guys for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. Like I mentioned during the intro, please go out there and follow Ashley. I've got links to everything in the show notes. But beyond that, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, wherever. And then whatever you're listening to today, make sure you give us a follow or a subscription there on your favorite podcast platform. And beyond that, make sure you give us a quick review so that more people find us when they search hunting podcasts. But that's it, guys. Thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. Now get out there and make some stories of your own. Thank you.